welcome to the Tea and a Buddy podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
Oh, are you? Hello. How are you? Very cute. This episode we're going to be talking about All Creatures Great and Small, the whole darn franchise.
Yay!
You don't know what that is, do you?
Well, I don't know what you mean when you say franchise.
It's a franchise, didn't you know? You didn't know, did you?
You mean the earlier incarnations of the show? Because it was a book first, was it?
It was a series. It was a series of books by Alf White, who wrote under the pen name of James Herriot, and he was a real life vet in the 40s.
Oh, there we go.
And it was partially autobiographical. 50% of the novels is fiction.
Oh yeah.
It's loosely based on real people and events.
So what we're talking about, just in case you have no idea and are completely lost. All Creatures Great and Small is a show that apparently, I'm not sure when it originally came on in Britain, but
1978.
This series. This series,
2020.
Yeah. 2020, okay, yeah. So last year.
During the lockdown,
But we sort of just caught on. We saw it on PBS the other night, a couple weeks ago.
We were up doing something. We were dancing or something, and then we saw it. We saw it on PBS.
We were dancing, as you do.
We were dancing, okay? We were dancing.
Just around the house.
That's what we do. We dance. We do
our TikTok dances.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff,
Anyway, it was on PBS. Doing our TikTok dances with PBS on in the background.
It's got to be done, hasn't it, people? Come on.
Anyway, yeah, we saw it on PBS. We had not heard anything about it.
No, I mean, I'd seen a couple of episodes of the original BBC show.
Well, that's what I said. I started watching it, and you were like, what is this? And I told you, and you said, oh, yeah, that's been on in the past, or...
Yeah, that's an old show.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't think... It doesn't look... I didn't think anything about it or whatever. Yeah, you were not interested whatsoever.
I wasn't really interested in it because I'd only seen a couple of episodes. It wasn't really my thing. It was like a sitcom type thing,
But, when you've watched all the shows, you need something else to watch sometimes. So
when you've watched all the shows that were ever made in the world.
So I talked him into... watching this show. We have that VPN, hashtag not sponsored, through Surfshark. And so we thought, you know what, why not? Let's watch the show. And so we started watching the show. I love a period drama, so I was pretty sure that, unless it was just horrendous, I was probably going to like it. We already knew a couple of the actors from it. And just let me know,
This
guys.
is the 2020 remake now.
Yeah, if you have already seen this, because obviously we're way behind, but we watched the whole series, we kind of flew through it, and...
Yeah, there's only been one series of it so far.
Yeah,
so.
And then Dominic was like, you know what, we should make this a podcast, because the podcasts where we talk about shows are so very popular.
They are, aren't they? You love listening to us talking about shows.
You know what, with some people they're very popular.
You might even love it.
They're very popular because, people who are into the kinds of things that we talk about are often into the same kinds of shows that we talk about.
Oh,
Which is why we talk about whatever we want to talk about.
We're just talking here, people.
But we do realize that these podcasts where we talk about shows that we've been watching are not necessarily interesting to absolutely everyone.
They are. They love listening. Because, you're in lockdown. You need something to watch. So here it is.
But I often think that you
can listen to us talking about stuff that you need to watch.
When we do these podcasts about shows, though, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think... Because we always go off topic no matter what we're talking about anyway.
What do you mean like now?
And when we do these shows, when we do these shows where we're talking about a show that we're watching.
Yeah.
Like this one, I have a feeling because of where it's set, we're going to talk about the setting. Yeah. We're going to venture off. So, you know what? If you're not interested in the show...
Keep
that
listening
we're talking
to us.
about. Yeah, keep listening because we might
not talk about the show at all. You never know. This is just titled All Creatures Great and Small. We're just talking about actual creatures that are great and small, and the settings.
No, but you guys know we go so off topic. So just keep listening, and you never know what we might end up talking about.
Just keep listening.
OMG. Okay. Anyway, take us back, Dominic. Take us way back, if you will.
Way back. way back. Alf White, he was a vet in the 40s in this practice in the Yorkshire Dales. Mm-hmm. And it was like a local, like, farm practice,
What is a dale, first of all?
It's just
for those of us
who have no idea. It's something that only ever happens in Yorkshire. Basically,
which means you have no idea either.
It's just basically green fields and
oh
hills.
My God, you really don't know. I thought maybe you did. Is it like
it's like
a moor?
Kind of like a moor, yeah.
Like a moor, but not. But not a moor.
It's like a valley kind of thing.
Okay.
It's like a valley.
If he's wrong, let us know.
I don't know the exactly. The Yorkshire Dales, because the Dales of mm-hmm. Yorkshire, they're just the rolling hills and the rolling fields, farmland.
Because they say, over in such and such Dale, and then you've got X Dale and Y
Swale
Dale.
Yeah, well, that's just, that's the name of the villages and stuff.
Well, that's probably why.
It's a collection of villages, really.
Then,
that's what, the Yorkshire Dales.
Because they all end with Dale,
Yeah, it's a collection of villages.
Okay, there we
Which
go.
is kind of like,
Anyway. We've already gone off topic.
He was a vet in the Yorkshire Dales.
Yeah.
He lived his Yorkshire Dales life.
Mm-hmm.
And
he was just living his Yorkshire Dales life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he had this, he wrote this book about, it was kind of like a partial autobiography, I guess.
Oh.
And it was and it came out in like 1970. It was like, if only they could talk.
Oh, so that's already interesting, isn't it? Because I kind of thought this was going to have been a book written by, like, just
someone who had no idea about vetting.
Well, not about that, but just an author, just a writer. You know what I mean? I didn't realize it was written by the guy, and he was a vet.
Alf White. He wrote under the pen name James Herriot, and that was his character in the book. That was him.
Yeah.
And he had Siegfried Farnan and his brother Tristan, which were based on Donald Sinclair and Brian Sinclair, who were both vets. And apparently Donald was this very eccentric guy,
Yeah.
And everybody was, when they were researching him and stuff like that to like play in the movies and stuff, they were like, oh yeah, in the novels he's toned down. He's quite eccentric in the shows and the novels and stuff like that. Because this was...
Which one's Donald Sinclair now? I can't remember.
Siegfried Farnan.
Okay.
Sam West plays him in the 2020 remake.
Siegfried, oh jeez.
He's the main vet. He's the vet that James Herriot comes to.
The older one, the one who owns the house and everything. Okay, yeah.
And he's a little bit blustery and pompous and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently he was like that, but only 200 times more so, and very eccentric. Apparently there's a story in the real James Herriot. The author's son said, his character was considerably toned down. He once discharged a shotgun during a dinner party to let his guests know it was time to leave. So, he's just like,
yeah.
And, when the first book, If Only They Could Talk, came out, it apparently tested the friendship between... because he didn't like how he was portrayed.
So the books were written by which fictional character then? The Scottish guy?
James Herriot, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the lead guy.
I can't remember their names. The characters' names.
I didn't really watch this show. I don't care about it.
I just don't retain that kind of information. Okay, yeah.
And they were and the first in the series and All Creatures Great and Small, the original one was Robert Hardy as Siegfried and Peter Davison, who you know as the Fifth Doctor.
Oh, yeah.
In Doctor Who.
And it came out in the 70s?
I think he played Tristan, actually. I'm not sure. But yeah, that came out in the 70s, late 70s. Mm-hmm. And it ran for like 4 series. And I think it stopped in 1980 and came back 10 years later and did another couple of episodes and then it just ended.
That's kind of funny because the guy who plays Tristan in this series was in the Durrells.
Was the Durrells, yeah.
Which is another period...
And Tristan is based on Brian Sinclair, yeah.
Which is another period show set on books written about someone's real life as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. That's really funny.
So that's what he gets cast in, He just find me an author who's a partial autobiography,
Yeah.
And it was to do with animals too,
Yeah.
So
That's
there you
really
go.
funny.
And it's funny to note here that Donald Sinclair, the vet, he had a namesake who was, he was an eccentric vet and he had a character based on him. Also, Donald Sinclair was a hotel owner in Torquay of the Glen Eagles.
Okay.
He was another eccentric character who someone wrote about. John Cleese, who based Basil Fawlty on him.
Right.
So it's funny. It's like Donald Sinclair. If your name is Donald Sinclair, you're bound to be eccentric at some point,
Yeah. So it's set in the late 1930s.
Late
right?
1930s, early 40s. Yeah.
Yeah. And is that when the books then
The
originally
books,
came out?
No, 1970.
Oh.
1972.
Oh.
And he carried on writing them until I think because he died.
So he was older and he was writing about years before.
Years before, yeah.
Okay.
He just had like a collection of like diaries and whatever, and he just kind of and he was still vetting even after the books became famous.
See how interesting this is, and you didn't want to watch the show.
I don't know why you thought I didn't want to watch the show.
Because you didn't want to watch it, that's why.
Excuse me, I was the one who queued it up for us that one night. And you came in and you were like, what are we going to watch tonight? And I was like, well, what about All Creatures Great and Small? And you went, okay. You went, okay. Yes, you did. Because we only watched that one episode on PBS. And I wasn't interested that time because I was too busy dancing. So they made 2 films in the 70s.
Yeah.
Because the book sales... The books weren't that popular to begin with. When they released the first 2, If Only They Could Talk was released in 1970, and It Shouldn't Happen to a Vet was 1972.
Yeah.
And they released them in Britain, and they didn't really do anything. It was just like 5,000 copies here and there,
Yeah.
It was only when the US publisher picked them up and put them together that and renamed the whole thing as like an anthology of like both books, All Creatures Great and Small, and he put some like artwork on them. They became huge, they picked up in sales, and that caught on over here.
We do know marketing in this country.
Yes, you do.
Huh.
And that's when they made the 2 films, and the first one was called All Creatures Great and Small, and it starred Anthony Hopkins as Siegfried.
Yeah.
That was about 1975.
It's funny. I think in the 70s there was a big resurgence of
rural dramas.
Well, yeah, because I don't know what. I'm not really sure the reasoning. I'm sure there are social and economic reasons as to why it was happening, but like as far as fashion and everything, like
self-sufficiency,
the prairie look was in
boho.
Self-sufficiency. People were growing things.
Yeah, because The Good Life came on around that time as well. That was another popular BBC sitcom, The Good Life.
Yeah, it's like I think it was the 70s. I'm not sure. I wasn't around.
You were around.
Little House on the Prairie. You had things like that. Like people were into the old-fashioned kind of way of life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
they longed for years gone by, for the bygone age, yeah.
The simpler time. Because I think in the 60s was like, there was a lot going on. You know what I mean? There was a lot going on.
There was a lot going on, yeah. It was kind of like a cultural revolution in a way.
Yeah, and so I think by the 70s, people were kind of longing for like just a simpler time.
Well, yes, people who'd managed to get a hold of it and come out at the other end.
So I think
the older generation, people who were in their maybe 40s and were in their 30s and the 60s and saw all this kind of stuff happening with the kids and the teens and the 20-year-olds who were like, oh, no, what we've got to get back to something before the war.
Yeah.
Pre-war, lovely time when remember we used to make our own stuff and clothes and
I don't know, I think
make and mend and all that kind of stuff.
I think it was with the young
people. Grow our own vegetables.
I think it was with the young people as well. You had a lot of communes and stuff like that happening in the 70s. And
also, there was a lot of processed foods and, technological advancements happening in the 70s.
Yeah.
You know, and processed foods in the UK were big.
Yeah.
And, you know,
so it was a sort of a rejection.
It was a rejection of that
Yeah.
because they were terrible. You know,
Yeah.
they were filled with preservatives and they were just it was just terrible food made for the microwave. You know?
So for that, all of those kind of reasons, I think that I can see something like All Creatures Great and Small being
a slower
popular
pace
in
of
the
life.
70s, you know? Yeah.
A nice slow pace of life set in the Yorkshire Dales. You know, where people are, you know, it's like, oh, you have to go up and see Farmer Ashby's cow. And, you know, it's funny things happening, you know, like, because we've got to get this cow and, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was just kind of like, oh, it's very gentle and nice, you know. And everybody likes that kind of thing. You know, it was like, yeah, one of those things. And when the BBC came out with that show in 78, you know, it was like a bigger... It was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was like, oh, you know, it really spoke to the popularity of that kind of genre, you could say.
Yeah.
So, and I guess it's happening now too, you know, with like All Creatures Great and Small, the remake, you know.
Oh, yeah, I think that's true.
You know, because of 2020 and, you know, 2019. You know, people, it's another kind of like technological revolution with like the advent of iPhones and, you know, smartphones and everything and broadband and Wi-Fi and all this kind of stuff. You know, people are just like, remember when life used to be simple, you know? And just
there's a rejection of it. Like people are knitting and they want to type on a typewriter. Now.
Well, I mean, there's some things that, you know, you go back to and it's like you're going a bit too far there.
Well, you know, I saw the other day people are wanting disposable cameras. I can't remember where I saw somebody was looking for that.
I mean, they're trying to restart the film processing again, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, process my own film.
It must cost an absolute fortune.
I make my own paper.
To send those disposable cameras off to get them developed now, but... Make my own paper, yeah. But yeah, no, it is the same thing. I see what you're saying. It is sort of a similar type situation, I guess, in a way, you know. So you can see the show coming back and it having an audience again. What I think is weird, though, is whenever a show like this comes back on and doesn't get a bigger deal made out of it, because it's quite just a gentle, nice little...
I'm surprised it's come on Channel 5.
In Britain,
yeah. Because that's usually a show you see on ITV or BBC, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in America, I think when we see these British shows come on PBS,
we just assume it's a BBC.
Yes,
all the time.
They all come from the BBC.
And it's quite funny because, you know, I think it was the cast of Downton Abbey when that became huge over here on PBS.
Yeah.
You know, they went on The View, the whole cast did.
Yeah.
And I think it was either Whoopi or Joy was going, oh yes, the BBC is so great at making these period dramas. They're so great. The BBC, and Hugh Bonneville was like, it's ITV actually. It's
they kept going ITV.
It's ITV. It's ITV. You know, it's like it's nothing to do with the BBC because the BBC are probably laughing.
We don't know what ITV is in America.
Independent television. It's the one with the adverts. You know. It's like a network. It's like a network over here. It's like NBC or ABC or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah. That kind of thing is, you know, it's very prevalent now. I think, and you know, it's going back to that discussion that we had about British shows over here.
Yeah.
You know, like when you see PBS shows, they're all period dramas.
Yeah.
You don't.
Usually,
I mean, you don't really get anything else on PBS that comes from the UK. You know, like we're just watching this show. Yeah, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? And it came on BBC Three.
You would not see that on PBS. Well, the whole thing about PBS is
it's set in the Cotswolds.
It's supposed to be educational, so I think historical shows are seen to be a bit more educational because they're educating you about a period of history. You know what I mean?
And it's like, why doesn't PBS turn their attention to that kind of thing with America's own history? I mean, I'm sure it does, but you don't really see it as much. You don't see them going, you know what, we should fund a show about the Civil War.
Yeah.
Someone should write a show about the Civil War or the Revolutionary War or even like,
Usually
Rosa
those are
Parks or anything
usually those are
yeah,
documentaries.
but no, documentaries aren't fun. You want to watch a show about...
You want to immerse yourself.
You want to immerse yourself in like
Yeah.
a character, It's like create a character that was a friend of Rosa Parks during this time and, you know, and the whole kind of like scene, that was going on, kind of like a Peaky Blinders type thing.
Yeah.
'Cause I think Peaky Blinders gets shown on PBS, doesn't it?
But I don't know if No.
It doesn't?
They don't show Peaky Blinders. No.
What is
PBS
it? Oh,
doesn't
Netflix, is it?
PBS doesn't have cussing and all of that kind of stuff. So none of those shows are going to be shown on PBS.
Peaky Blinders, the watered down, the watershed version, the pre-watershed version.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to get any of those. You don't get any of the, like all the detective shows that they have in Britain. You don't get those on PBS. This has become a completely different podcast, by the way.
Yeah, you do. You get Father Brown and all
that's
that.
a period. That's set in a period, though, isn't it?
Midsummer Murders.
Did we get that on PBS?
Yeah.
I don't
I'm
think
sure
so.
a few of our followers has gone, oh yeah, I've been watching Midsummer Murders on PBS.
No, I don't think so.
Yes. Tell us. You've been watching Midsummer Murders, haven't you?
Like, you're not going to see Marcella or,
That's too gritty.
what's the other one? Luther? The one everybody
Luther,
talks about, yeah.
That comes on BBC America, I think, Luther.
Yeah. I mean, there's other places for that kind of show,
Well, I mean, it's not... Well, Midsummer Murders is very rural. It's kind of like... It's a gentle detective show. Inspector Morse definitely came on over here on PBS.
Yeah.
Lewis.
I don't know.
Yeah, and Father Brown, which is it's the gentle kind of like whodunits.
Anyway, All Creatures Great and Small.
Back to All Creatures Great and Small, which is not a detective show, but it could be.
No.
You know.
This first series that we watched ends on Christmas, right? Wasn't that the last episode?
I think it's Christmas 39.
Christmas 38.
38, is it?
37.
Oh, does it?
Isn't it
I thought it
37?
ended with the outbreak of war.
No. Mm-mm. Oh. Was that something? I think that was something else.
We're getting out.
Recently watched.
Oh, what was that we were just recently watching then?
It was a movie.
A movie that
Yeah, it was Bright Young Things. Or
That's it.
Yeah.
That was it. Sorry about that.
Oh my god, you guys, we watch too much television. This
No.
is just putting the nail in the coffin of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was that. No, this ends at Christmas 1937, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, and I mean, you said you didn't watch the incarnation from the 70s in the first place,
not
right?
really. I only saw like one episode, and of course it was 1970s production values, so it looks like Paul Dark in the 70s. That's probably where they thought, we'll just go back to the old BBC shows from the 1970s and remake them for today, with a better production value, you know? Because, I mean, back then it was just on wonky old sets and too bright lighting.
That's
and
why I never...
dusty old,
I never watched any of that stuff when it used to come on PBS when I was a kid, because it just looked terrible compared to the things I was used to watching,
It was, yeah, I mean, you were used to watching, like, colourful things. Well, I mean, as a kid, you don't want to watch that stuff anyway. I think a follower of ours watched All Creatures Great and Small when it came out. She said, I used to watch it with my mother.
Yeah.
And it was the original 70s show, and my mother really liked it, so... it has its audience. I mean, it was big over here,
I mean, it's
a cult.
There's
thing,
not as much drama as something like Downton Abbey.
Oh,
or something
no,
like that.
no,
It's
no.
very like
It's gentle.
Yeah, it's just for if you need something to watch and something that's just kind of sweet. Although I will say I don't like the woman who lives with them. What is her name? What the character's name?
Oh, the housemaid, the housekeeper.
Yeah. I have no idea how she was in real life because I haven't read the books. I haven't done any research on these real life people. Obviously, at the beginning of this podcast, I didn't even know they were real life people. I don't like, though, I looked the actress up because in the show, the character is treated like almost like she's their mother, right?
Yeah.
Like she cooks and cleans and does all the woman things, which is not typical of the
It was typical of the
1930s,
day.
especially the area that they live in, I would imagine.
Because it's Siegfried and Tristan Farnon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, Siegfried's practice, vet practice.
Yeah.
And he hires James Herriot to be his, assistant vet.
Yeah.
To take on the workload. But he's still the big boss, he's still the main vet.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a brother who's gone off to university.
Yeah.
And he comes back because... And it turns out that he's he's kind of a little
He's a bit of a party boy.
He's a bit of a party boy, yeah. So Siegfried has high hopes of him being an actual vet and passing his exams and doing all that kind of stuff. But him and James, or Jim Herriot, they're both young, so they go, they're easily finding stuff to get up to, in the village.
Mm-hmm.
And Siegfried's very blustery and, all this kind of stuff, But yeah, they've got this woman who works for them as a housekeeper,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't remember her name. But anyway, my point was that she is treated by the guys like she's this older lady. She lives with them. Apparently she's left an abusive husband and I guess left her kid with the husband. And so she's sort of, it's a bit sad really, because she's sort of hoping that her son, I guess, is going to kind of forgive her and come back to her and find her and be with her and everything. And the son apparently is a bit of a troublemaker as well.
Yeah. Edna, her name is Mrs. Hall. Mrs.
Hall. But I looked the actress up because in the show, she's, like I said, she's treated like a mother figure and she looks like she's older than the oldest vet, who is Siegfried, right?
Yeah.
She looks like she's older than him. But I looked her up and she is actually younger than him in real life. And it's just so... The actress is younger than the actor in real life. And I'm just like, how they got this? You know what I mean? It's just like, how did they...
No, they do it with Downton Abbey too. I was telling you that.
Annoying. That is so annoying, though, because she's not a bad-looking woman. She's younger than this guy, but yet she's cast to play this older, matronly, mother figure woman, and she's actually freaking younger than the guy. That is the most annoying...
She's younger than Sam West.
Yeah, that's the most annoying thing. I really do not appreciate that about the production, but that's the only thing that I don't appreciate. I'm like, there's a bunch of older women who they could have cast in this role instead of a woman who's younger, frump her up, don't put any makeup on her, and then make her play someone older than... she actually is.
She's playing the old Yorkshire woman.
Oh, I have no idea actually how old she's supposed to be in the show.
Yeah,
but they don't. Her like...
Well, I mean, she's an old maid.
Yeah.
That's the character, an old maid. She's Mrs. Audrey Hall in this, not Edna, because I guess Edna's a bit too old now.
Yeah.
So they renamed it to Audrey, Because, I mean, she's still a little bit like Wahey Waho a bit, because she has a mate, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She has a mate of hers that's the same age as her, but she's a little bit more young looking, because she likes to put makeup on and do her hair and a little bit wear tighter clothes or whatever, and chase after the men.
Brighter colored clothes.
Brighter colored clothes, yeah. She's not dressed because she's very God-fearing and all that, Mrs. Hall is, and, her son, whatever. But yes, I mean, the actress is 10 years younger than Sam West.
Yes!
And they make her up to look all matronly.
She is so much younger. And I'm just like, what is happening? I mean, looking at her in this show, unfortunately, I would have never known that she was the age that she is. And then they treat her like she's so much older. And I'm just like, no. We have to not do this.
Well, someone who you didn't recognize first off, who's also in the show.
Oh, yeah.
Is Matthew Lewis,
Yeah.
who plays Hugh Halton.
Mm-hmm.
And Matthew Lewis, as people will know, was Neville Longbottom in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, and he's kind of like a rival for the affections of the girl Helen.
The
main girl.
The love interest.
Of James Herriot.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah.
And we can't forget Tricky Woo.
We won't spoil too much of it. I guess we probably already have. But the show came out last year in America, which means it probably came out in 2019 in Britain, because for some reason PBS takes forever to get shows from Britain. I don't know why. At least 6. Usually it's like at least 6 months. So you've all probably seen it already, but it was new to us, so we just wanted to talk about it. Okay.
We did. We loved it. Yeah.
We loved it.
And it's going to be a second season already in the pipeline. Channel 5 have commissioned it.
I'm guessing it's going to run up to the war. I'm wondering if it's going to
he did like
continue.
7. Yeah, he did 7 books.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he did 7 or 8 books before he died. This series.
So the repackaging in America then must have been like,
it was an anthology of like the first 2 books, and then he continued writing on.
Okay, so it wasn't like, I've got this box set of the Game of Thrones books.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking? Like all creatures great and small is like a box set of all 7 of the books?
No, it was the first
2.
It was the first 2, but they weren't called All Creatures Great and Small. For some weird reason, he decided to call it. The US publisher changed the name.
Right.
And so that's what it became known as. And it was only the first 2 books that were in there.
Yeah.
And then he did another book, and then he just carried on until 1980, I think.
Well, that's interesting. Do you know how many series there were in the 70s?
I think there was 4.
Okay.
Well, there was like 2 series, and then it came back like 10 years later. Weirdly enough,
right,
I guess interest was renewed enough, and they did another 2 series, and then they ended it.
Okay. So, interesting. It'll all depend, I guess, with it being on Channel 5, how big the audience was as to how long they'll keep going. But, that's interesting. Well, I'd like to see it carry into maybe during the war and see what happens, what transpires.
Yeah, because pre-production work has begun on the second series.
Yeah.
So, apparently there was a news item in February 2021 for historic artifacts, much needed props, because they needed farming implements pre-1938.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And
I'm sure people have them
homeware,
tucked away.
It's just like they can't find this stuff anymore. You can't trawl through antique shops and stuff,
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, I think we're out of time. I think we're over time, actually. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Yes. We hope you enjoyed this episode. It's been wonderful. It's been a pleasure to make.
Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we appreciate your support. Be sure to check us out on social media. We are at Butty, TEABUTTY on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I don't know why I do them in that order, but anyway.
Well, it's easy. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook doesn't really sound that great, does it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe alphabetical. Maybe that's,
Alphabetical.
My mind's just alphabetized. So.
Alphabetized.
Yeah, and we'll talk to you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.